That was weird. Hi witchlings, welcome back to my channel. It's me, your local chaotic witch aunt. Today we're doing a fun little Q&A video. I had people send me in some questions via witchcraft on my Instagram, a little question box. I'm gonna go through and answer some of them, and we'll do my best to answer some of them. So yeah, let's see what we got. Looks like a lot so far. I like some of these. I know you have a pet bunny. Would you ever consider working with bunny or rabbit energy? I do, actually. I do work with the rabbit. I honor the rabbit in my practice, and it's one of the main spirits that I work with. How does traditional Catholicism and the saints work in your folk magic practice? That's a really great question. So I'm answering this via my experience. Everyone who works with saints works with them differently. For me, a lot of times if I want something done but I don't really feel like doing a full spell, I will do a novena or ask a particular saint for help. There are certain saints that I have a particularly strong relationship with, and that is partially because my family has been calling on them for hundreds of years probably, but also because of my practice itself. They're more associated with. That would be Saint Mary, Saint Anthony, Saint Michael are the three main saints that I probably work with the most, but I have done workings with Saint Joseph. I've done workings with a few others as well. But yeah, for that, it is very much depending on what kind of folk practice you want to do. For me, they are either, you know, invoked via novena, or I do a spell with them. I have done some workings with St. Peter for uncrossing. If I lose something, I'm always calling on St. Anthony because love St. Anthony, one of my favorites. Oh, anyways, do intrusive thoughts impact spell work or manifestations? Not in my opinion, no. And I do think that it's really harmful to say that. I think that intrusive thoughts are something that can't be controlled. Like, you know, a lot of people have them. I've had them before. And when you're doing spell work, you are focusing on intent. Those intrusive thoughts aren't necessarily your intent. They're not you intending to have that thought affect your spell work or intending for that thought to affect the manifestation. And I have seen a lot of people say really harmful things, like if you have intrusive thoughts or you're anxious thinking about something, you're going to accidentally manifest it, which I think is an incredibly harmful thing to say, because a lot of times people can't control their anxious or intrusive thoughts, and having those thoughts and not being able to control them doesn't mean that you're gonna have them. What is the most important thing every witch should know or learn? Critical thinking skills. That. If you have critical thinking skills, you are set with witchcraft. Like, there are just levels to things that you have access to with critical thinking. And critical thinking is one of those things that you have to you don't necessarily have to train your brain to do it, but it is something that, like, you may have been taught either in high school or in college. And if you weren't in college, it's really easy to kind of look up those kind of charts. I'm sure that I can actually grab a critical thinking chart and like put it right here, or have my editor put it right there. Critical thinking skills is my big one. I think every witch should know it, and every witch should take part in it. What to do when books are expensive? Great question. If you're looking at physical books and they're too expensive, you can often find thrifted books, secondhand books that are a lot less expensive. Thrift Books is my favorite website. Usually you can find some titles there for like maybe under $10. As well as that, you can also use Scribd, which is a pay by monthly service, and you get access to digital books, as many as you want. You can read as many as you want. If a Scribd thing is too expensive, you can buy a digital book, and digital book copies like Kindle or just like the digital version of a book is usually a lot less expensive than the physical print copies. Hope that helps. We have answered this one already, but what deities are you currently working with? I am working with Diana, technically working with Lucifordos, although it's more of I just set up a place for him and he hangs out type of relationship, and I worship Hades. I don't work with Hades, I worship Hades. Apart from that, those are the only deities I'm working with. It's relatively simple right now. If you want to hear more about my practice and what I'm doing, you can hop over to my Practice Then and Now video. I will put a card for you, and I go in depth with that a little bit more. What's your favorite type of divination? Tarot is my favorite type of divination. Tarot cards, oracle cards. I don't know why, but it's always been something that's come easily to me that I really enjoy doing, and that's kind of why I've stuck with it. I did try learning other forms of divination like pendulum, scrying, etc., but none of them really worked as well for me or I enjoyed as much as tarot. Could you explain what being gender fluid means to you? Yes. The best way I can explain it is every day I wake up in a society. Just kidding. Every day I wake up and I'm at a different place on the gender spectrum. Sometimes I'm leaning more towards the more masculine side, sometimes I'm leaning more towards the quote-unquote feminine side, and sometimes I'm smack dab in the middle. I've had like month-long periods where I've slid and stayed over by the more feminine side of the binary, and like month-long periods where I've slid and stayed over by the more masculine side of the binary. It kind of flip-flops a lot for me, and it just goes everywhere. I usually describe it as sometimes I wake up and feel like a woman, and sometimes I wake up and feel like 40 ferrets in a trench coat. And I never really know where I'm gonna end up. I guess to me gender is like a societal construct, and I don't know if I fit into it in the way that people would assume I would. Like, I know people look at me and see a woman or a more feminine person, but to me, I don't feel that way, if that makes sense. Do you feel like your relationship with nature has changed since you started your practice, and how? Yeah. I think I'm a lot more, or at least I try to be more, not necessarily nurturing, but mindful of my relationship with nature. I try to look at it and see how I can help cultivate a relationship and help cultivate healing with nature instead of just kind of taking from it. And obviously this is like a long process for me, but I think that there's a level of understanding of seeing nature as kind of a being with lots of spirits in between, and it being a kind of living thing, not just something to take from. I hope that makes sense. Have you ever used wands in a practice? I've seen some people do, but how do you use them? I used to have a wand. Now I point, well, I guess it's kind of a wand. It's more just a tool for me. It's a bone, a thigh bone. Wands are typically used for pointing at things, drawing sigils in the air, drawing a circle, etc. They help conduct power. So let's say I am sitting here and I want to point at something and conduct all my energy and power towards there. I will point at it with the wand. That's the way I've seen people use it. I know it can be different a little bit depending on who you are, but it really depends. Okay, tell us about some of your favorite lessons you've learned from your deities, even better if it's funny. I think I have a list. So I made a TikTok video a while back and I was gonna duet it with these, but a few that I've learned from my deities include, my peace means more to me than your opinion of me. You don't need to know how everything is going to play out. Sometimes it's best just to experience things as they come. Being wrong and making mistakes is the only way that you grow. You will find your people. You may have shit fall apart and go to hell in that process, but there's always a place for everyone. Don't force yourself to create if you're not inspired. People can tell. Apart from that, another one that is recent is, it's better to be alone than be in a relationship that is not good for you. Which isn't my current relationship, but like past relationships, that was a past lesson. And that happened because Freya ruined a relationship of mine. Always a good time. Do you think faith and witchcraft can be intertwined? Yeah, of course. Witchcraft is a practice, and faith, depending on what is faith in, it could be faith in a higher power, faith in a certain religion, faith in yourself. Faith is always capable of like intertwining with witchcraft in a lot of ways, in my opinion. Do you have to worship deities and have an altar to be a witch? No, you do not. You do not have to worship deities to be a witch. Witchcraft is a practice, not a religion, and you don't have to be pagan. You don't have to have anything to do with deities in your witchcraft practice. You can straight up be like, I'm gonna be a secular witch. If you're interested in a witchcraft creator who does a lot less working with deities and a lot more kind of just working with energy and that kind of stuff, The Witch of Wonderlust is someone I always recommend. I'm a pagan, so my deities are intrinsic to my witchcraft practice, but that is not the case for everyone. As for having an altar, it is my opinion that it's good to have an altar, but you don't need it. Just having your room be a sacred space, just having a area that is sacred to you for you to do your workings is important. That doesn't always have to be an altar space. I can't smoke cleanse on campus and I'm not interested in crystals. Is sound cleansing a bad option? No. Sound cleansing is a very valid and amazing way to practice your witchcraft or your cleansing. Literally, bells, banging pots and pans together, yelling, like all these things, those are very valid. How old were you when you first started the craft? 16 or 17, I believe. I was interested in it for sure at 16 and started researching at 16. My first grimoire pages, when I finally got my hands on a notebook, were probably around 17, I believe. Maybe 18, I'm unsure. What is the best way to get back into witchcraft after not practicing for a long time? Start slow. Find something that interests you about your practice or something to learn that interests you and start there. Don't try to throw yourself in and do a bunch of spells and have a daily practice all at once. Slow down and just look at, okay, I want to get back into this. What is something that interests me? What is something that I really want to have back in my life? And start there. Remember to go slow. This kind of stuff takes time, especially if you are on a break. You don't want to burn yourself out. You don't want to overwhelm yourself by throwing yourself back into it right away. What are the biggest changes you've seen in the witchcraft/pagan community since you started? Since I started witchcraft, a lot of changes in the knowledge that is available. It used to be primarily Wiccan sources or Wiccan influenced sources. So Scott Cunningham, a lot of the things online had to do with that. And that's since I started witchcraft, since I started my TikTok and my YouTube channel, I've noticed some differences in how people approach paganism and deity work, which I think is really great. I think there are a lot more opinions and a lot more nuance that are being added to the conversation than what I was used to when I first started on the internet. Let's see what else we have. Please tell us about how to ask a deity if they would like to work with you. Great starting point. I did a video on starting deity work. Boop, I will put a card there. But if you want kind of less of a intense opinion, just start by researching them and worshiping them to begin a relationship with them. I mean, you don't have to ask permission to worship a deity. And then either that worshiping gets the attention of the deity, you begin working together, or alternatively, you just kind of fall into working with them. Or you find out that this deity is not the kind of deity you would want to work with, or they don't want to work with you, and you kind of move forward with that in mind and look for other options. How do you work with plant spirits? I've done research and read books, but I'm still confused. Okay, that's a question that I'm hopefully going to answer in a video that will be posted before this video. So I'm just gonna link that because a lot of people are interested in it. I'm gonna see what else we have for questions. That looks like it's the majority of them. Do you sometimes feel stuck in your practice? If so, how do you get out of that mentality? If I feel stuck, I typically go on a hike. I go out to nature and I just spend some time out and about there. I usually feel stuck when I feel like I'm not accomplishing things in my practice or I'm not experiencing enough. And that sounds really weird. That's my particular way of categorizing my witchcraft practices. I'm doing things, I'm feeling things, I'm experiencing things. Cue that video with Kylie Jenner's if you wanted to experience things, I just would think you'd go out there and experience them, experiencing things. But I usually try to get out in nature, maybe do some grounding, visit the trees, spend some time in my backyard. Those may not be methods that work for everyone, but for me, they always kind of help me see the bigger picture again, get some perspective, for lack of a better term. I'm gonna see if there's anything else. Also, today's tea is Breakfast Blend by David's Tea. It's not breakfast time, but it's delicious. I love it. Curious about your book. How did you decide what to include versus not include, and when was it ready? Great question. It was ready after lots of proofreading from both my peers and my editor, and edits by my editor, myself, and my peers. I decided what to include because I knew what the intent of the book was and what the target audience was. I wanted to write a beginner book that could be picked up by someone who doesn't know what witchcraft is and they could have a foundation to their practice, or someone who's like, I don't even know where to start, or someone who is maybe a couple years into their practice is saying, I want to revisit the basics, where do I start? So for that intent, I knew what I wanted to include, because in my mind I've always had a set kind of foundation to my practice, what I learned first, and overall I wanted to write the book that I needed when I was starting. And a lot of the things that I chose to include were things that I feel like are essential to starting witchcraft. How do you see deities in general and their relations to their myths? Are they just egregores or beings? I see deities as divine beings. I don't really know for sure whether I see them as egregores or not. I think I'm kind of fluid with the way I think about them. To me, they are literal divine beings that exist and have existed for very long before us. We just gave them names and myths and ideas. So at the end of the day, the energy that they represent and the energy that they are all traces back to something. We just we don't understand what it is because we're human. Why you avoid working with Zeus? I've recently received signs from him. You can work with Zeus. I avoided working with Zeus because I don't vibe with him. And what I mean by that is I don't feel like I could learn anything from him. He is not a god that I feel like would help me, and it doesn't mesh with my path. But I still have a great amount of respect for him, and although he scares the shit out of me, he's a great deity to work with. He's worked with a lot of people that I know, he's done a lot of good. Can you be an atheist witch? Yes, 100%. I know a lot of secular and atheist witches. How did you manage to be consistent in your practice? It has continued to be very difficult. It is continued to be very difficult. It's a constant struggle for me, and that's because of like issues that I have, and that's okay. But I do this thing where I set up a low, medium, high energy scale, and depending on the day, how much energy I have, I will choose an activity to do. How does working with Artemisia vulgaris feel? I love working with mugwort so much. Definitely one of those plants that is just gonna throw you for a whirlwind and then pick you back up and be like, let's do it again. Mugwort is also really great for working with divination, very protective, very grounding energy for me, which I don't know if a lot of people would relate to that. It's also a very intense energy for me. How do you suggest finding a mentor? I genuinely suggest taking your time with it. I do mentorship stuff through my Patreon, but I also have someone who I consider a mentor who I took classes with, and finding that person and looking for mentors is a long process, and it really matters that you choose the right person. But I think take your time with it. That's what I mean to say. Being a big name in the Wicca community, does it ever stress you out giving advice or guiding? Yeah. There's a reason that I do most of my education on YouTube, and it's because it's a long form platform for me to flesh out my ideas. And there's, a point that you realize that you're going to be wrong sometimes, you're going to make mistakes. I'm still learning just like everyone else. I'm not perfect. And although I can answer a lot of questions, it's my practice, my opinion, and disagreeing with me is okay. So I know that sometimes people are going to disagree with what I say. I know sometimes people are going to read my book and, disagree with what I believe are foundations. And I understand that there are so many different ways to go about witchcraft that I'm not the only one. I try my best to give a very kind of like secular, modest approach to a lot of my answers about advice and stuff, and also base it a little bit off my experience. But I know that I'm not for everyone, and that's okay. And I think that was the hardest thing learning, is that I can't make everyone happy. I just have to continue doing the best I can, being truthful and moving forward. How did writing your book affect your practice, if at all? It was devotional work. I wrote it in devotion to my deities and as part of my witchcraft practice. It was great. It was great. I get to learn about a lot of new things as I was writing it, because as I was writing it, I'm like, what, I would really love to pull from this, but I don't know enough about it, so I would go out of my way and research it and learn everything I could about it and then incorporate it into the book. I did that so much and I loved it. As I was writing it, I got to learn as well as creating something for other people to learn, and that made me really happy. What type of spell still intimidates you to do in your current practice? Really intense, painful magic stuff. And I think it intimidates me because I have preconceived notions about it. I definitely am working on deconstructing my mindset, thinking about how I'm going about it, the real reason. I really kind of dissect Bingo Magic. I don't do it lightly. I look at it like, okay, let me break it down, let me go through it. Do you have experience with demonology? I don't have a lot, to be honest. Lucifer was the only one that would kind of be considered a demon, and I didn't work with him for long. And I didn't even treat him like a demon. I treated him more like a Roman epithet of Lucifer. What's the most reliable source? It depends on what you're looking for. There are lots of reliable sources available, academic articles, books, etc., people that are really reliable. It totally depends on what you are looking for, really. So if you want a little nuance to that, if you're looking for specific information, I can try to give you something that I consider reliable or vetted in the comments. Where do you get your information from online? At this point, most of my information comes from academic articles. I go through JSTOR, which I have access to through a university, and I find academic articles or sociological articles. A lot of the articles I find, or a lot of the books that I find, tend to be either historical references by specific authors that I consider reputable, and I do sometimes watch YouTube. If you're interested in the channels that I really enjoy, you can see a list of my channels down below. I wouldn't say that I go to the internet a lot anymore, unless it's for really basic stuff. I mostly will learn from my friends and from books. Hold on, I gotta take a sip of my coffee. Whee! Why do you think you connect with witchcraft so much? Great question. I feel like I connect with it because to me it makes sense. Spirituality makes sense. Just as much as science makes sense. And I don't know how to explain it, but it makes my experience as a human being make more sense to me. And as well as that, I love the things that witchcraft stands for. I love learning about it historically. To me, it felt like everything fell into place when I became a witch, and that's why I stuck with it for so long. Tips for closeted witches, please. You would be surprised at how much you can do with kitchen spices. You don't need fancy candles. You don't need an altar. You don't need all these things that online you see me doing or you see other people doing. A lot of times, spells are as easy as writing your manifestations down, putting it somewhere, putting your intention into the universe. You don't need a fireproof plate. You don't need candles. You can just take some basil or a bay leaf from the kitchen and make a spell around that. However, I do want to make it clear that if you feel as though you practicing witchcraft in your house could result in being kicked out and losing financial stability, wait. Let yourself research and read books. There are so many good places to read books online. Research, read books, and take your time learning, and don't do anything that could put you in harm's way, because overall you have your entire life to learn about this stuff. You have your whole life to learn about it. You have your whole life to practice. You don't have to speed through it. But if you get kicked out, if you lose financial stability, if you are put in harm's way by practicing witchcraft in a house that maybe is not accepting of it, that will alter the course of your life. Be careful, be cognizant, and be cautious. Thoughts on witchcraft with social media. I think that witchcraft and social media has both its pros and cons. I think that it's been really great for witches to create their own businesses, to garner support, to move through the world living authentically. I also think that with the rise of witchcraft and social media, there is a level of, we see on Instagram, scammers, people taking advantage of that. I do think that social media is something that we can never be too sure who's behind that screen. You never really know someone. You guys don't know me. I try to be the most honest with you that I can. But let's be honest, you've never met me in person. If you have, where? But I think there needs to be a level of critical thinking and discernment when it comes to people on the internet, and I think that's important. How do you meditate? I can't stay sitting for more than 15 minutes just in silence. I do guided meditations and I do active meditation. Active meditation is like walking around, cleaning, meditating while doing the dishes, meditating in the shower. So I'm never sitting, I'm consistently moving, and that's how I meditate. It's really great on a hike. It's really great if you're doing something that you love, like drawing, dancing. You can meditate in that way. Do you have to come out of the broom closet to everyone in your life? No, you don't. Your choice. I went all the way over and told everyone and their mother when I was a witch, and now I'm on the internet as a famous which, but you don't have to do that. It's your choice. A lot of these are really interesting theological questions that I would love to get into. Any superstitions you follow? I follow a lot of traditional Italian folk magic superstitions. If someone compliments me, say Ciao Benedica after so you don't get the evil eye, which I say that at the end of my videos too. It's almost like it's a formality, but it's also like a way of being like, yeah, be blessed. Like, it's a positive thing. Do people actually research for hours, or do they want a quick gratification solution? Depends on who you are. I personally research for hours. Thoughts on crystals that get rid of mental disorders? No. Crystals can't do that. I'm sorry. You know what can help with mental disorders? Therapy. And I understand that therapy is really difficult to access in the US, but saying that there are crystals that will like solve your mental illness is really harmful. It's spiritual bypassing. How often do you meditate? Not as often as I should. Let's just stick with that. What's your favorite type of weather? Rain. Which sucks because in Colorado there is no rain. It's just cold and snow. And then blistering heat. But it's not heat like humid, it's heat like dry heat, so it's confusing. It doesn't make any sense. You don't sweat, you just kind of burn. What is your favorite herb? I have a couple favorite herbs. Rosemary, ruda. Mugwort is another favorite herb of mine. I have a soft spot for a few other ones. I do like basil. I think it's because it tastes really good. And wealth. Not witchcraft, but is Edwin still there? Yeah, hold on. This is Edwin's house. He is a house spirit, but he did come with us to Colorado because he is attached to the family and not the house that we were in. So yeah, he's with us. He just really likes staying in his little spirit home that I made him. This is his rock. He has another rock there. He's on my ancestral altar. So although he's a house spirit, he's more of a familial spirit in a lot of ways. Tarot or oracle? Tarot. How long does it usually take you to do a spell? Totally depends on what the spell is asking for. Some spells take me an hour, some spells take me 20 minutes, some spells take me a week or 9 days. It really depends on how much I want it to work, how much energy I'm putting behind it, what the spell is for, am I including a novena for the saints, etc. What's your bunny's name? Ginger. What are some things you wish people would stop saying about witches or witchcraft? That we work with the devil. All of us work with the devil. That's annoying. Some witches do work with the devil, and that's completely valid, but witchcraft is not inherently tied to the devil, and most of the time when people are working with the devil, it's not actually the Christian devil, it's like a different being altogether. What's your favorite smell? I have a lot of favorite smells. Very romantic, my partner. That's great. He smells so good. Other things, rosemary. I love the smell of some of the candles that the Storm Witch gives me, like the clearing one. I'm like reaching level 5,000. It's so good. Rosemary, amber, bergamot. All good. One thing you wish you knew as a baby witch. Wicca is not everything. That is not the only practice that exists. That is what I wish I knew. So those are all the questions that I've gotten. If I get more questions, I will throw them in tomorrow and film more again tomorrow. But for now, that is all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day. If you feel like it, you can like, comment, subscribe, turn the bell on, but no pressure. Remember to drink water. Ciao Benedica.